Hello, and welcome back to the Excedo Playback Podcast, the podcast discussing industry news, trends, and tech advancements in the OTT and streaming industry. I'm your host, Neil Van Zyl. In this episode, we're going to sit down with a PR expert who spent over 20 years shaping communications and promotions for technology vendors across the streaming ecosystem. From the early days of OTT innovations to today's eras of AI-driven insights, she shares her perspectives on how the industry has evolved, which trends have come and gone, how companies are positioning themselves to stand out in an ever-crowded market. Joining us today is Helen Weedon, founder of Radical Moves PR. Helen, thanks for joining.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Let's jump into it. So, as mentioned, you spent more than 2 decades working with technology vendors across the streaming ecosystem. From your perspective, how has the industry sort of evolved in that time?
I mean, it has changed so much over that time, as you can imagine, but it's really weird to think, these days we talk about OTT video services as if it's just a normal part. I mean, everybody's got an OTT service, right? But way back, I'm not that old, honestly, but when I first started in the industry, TV was still pretty linear. It was viewed on a TV. And so everything kind of has shifted so dramatically in that time. When I first started working with Excedo in 2007, we were talking about how this future of IPTV and being able to have a bit of interaction, and it was all around casual games, because that's what Excedo originally was doing, bringing casual games to those TVs. So the change has been quite phenomenal in terms of what's possible and how video providers can reach an audience and how they can enable that personalization as well. And with that, the way we message, everything has evolved.
Well, I guess let's dive a little bit more into that. So, when you first started working with streaming, what were the stories or messages people were trying to tell?
So, I mean, it was still around kind of everything revolves around reaching your audience and giving them a good user experience. So I started my career in this industry at Dolby. We were talking a lot about the audio experience, obviously, and how that's an important part of the video, which is still valid today. And there was a lot around shifting the audio so that often when you go to an ad break, the audio would suddenly get really loud. So it's a lot about having that balance so you didn't suddenly have massive changes in audio volume based on shifting to ad breaks and things like that. So kind of a lot of that, it's still that focus on the user, but what that looks like has changed a lot. I was trawling through some old press releases, which was quite interesting. So I found one from 2010. No, actually it was 2008, where for Excedo, where we talked about Web 2.0 and this future of being able to have essentially like your TV to be more like a website, so you could interact in a different way, and that was super interesting. But I also, I worked with a company that does that still does streaming, so webcasting more, and I found a press release from them from 2009, I think it was. And one of the biggest features we pushed in this webcast that they'd done for a client, for an event, was the fact that they had Q&A functionality, which is just crazy to think. Obviously nowadays that's standard. I mean, of course you can ask questions when you're remotely joining a webcast, but then it was new, and it was something quite exciting that you could join an event remotely and be able to ask questions and see your answers live in real time.
It's funny you say how things have shifted. Even specifically from a Dolby perspective, I was at I think it was CES a few years ago already, so it's already a little old at this point. But they were testing some technology around spatial audio in VR scenarios. So you're at a concert in VR, and based on where your position is shifted in the actual space, then you can hear the sound differently. So it's obviously things have changed a little bit over that time, but pretty interesting. I will say though, I'm not certain that we've solved the TV volume thing. That one might might still need a little bit of work.
Yeah, quite possibly actually. Yeah, I mean, we also talked a lot about 3D audio and and just trying to figure out. I remember we did some research, some sort of headline driven research where we got a load of people to come and listen to surround sound, and they had to identify where the sound was coming from, which speaker. And then our headline was that men listen better than women. That was it.
It's funny. That's probably a bit in dispute still, I think. I wouldn't be surprised. I definitely think in my household it definitely is.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
We like you mentioned some of these stories, but what if you look back? What were some of the trends that people thought would change things, but didn't end up quite living up to their expectations?
So the biggest one I think for me has got to be 3D. And it's very sad because I actually at the time I did some work with a very well-known company that made 3D glasses as along with a whole load of other stuff that they do. And so, and so we had a lot of articles that we did around how 3D was going to be amazing. And the glasses, I mean, we had some that I've still got them somewhere, I think, that so that we could show them to journalists. And they were quite cool. And they had some that fitted over the top of your glasses as well, which was good. But we wrote lots of things about how it wasn't going to flop. It was going to be really a massive thing. Everyone was going to be watching 3D. Has anyone still got a 3D television? I'm not sure.
Not that I know of. I personally, I think it's gone the right way there, but I can understand there was a lot of tech that went into it, and it was pretty interesting for a while.
Yeah, I think it like for certain use cases it's quite cool, but sitting in the cinema and watching a whole film, a whole normal feature length film in 3D is actually quite tiring and a bit of effort. And I think it just, yeah.
Anything from an OTT perspective specifically that you can remember that might have also been a little bit either ahead of its time or probably rightfully left at that point?
I'm not sure that I can specifically think. I mean, the one that keeps sort of bubbling in the background and I think hasn't gone away and will be quite an interesting technology is XR, of course. So it, originally we were talking VR, so maybe that's changed. It's not so much we're not talking VR. That's by itself maybe not so interesting. But the XR, when you look at immersive experience in general and different ways you can deliver them, that's super interesting. But it just has been talked about for a long time, and I think we're now starting to see maybe that traction might come, and we're not quite there yet with full adoption. So and there's a lot of skepticism still. I remember going to not that long ago, I think it was last year. I went to an event, the Bristol Mixer in Bristol, and it was all Exceedo's competitors on on the panel, and they were asked about XR, and all of them were quite skeptical about XR. So I was the only Exceedo representative in the room, so I did put my hand up and give some of the perspective of the use cases where it could be really interesting, especially around sports and live events, concerts, etc. So I think, yeah, it's not gone, but it hasn't yet had its chance to shine fully, perhaps.
There's definitely some strong use cases for it. I think the technology does just need to get to a point further along where the glasses don't either need to be directly connected to the device or they still can still fit on your head. But extended reality over vision of I guess virtual reality is I agree is likely the path forward. So a bit more augmented.
Yeah, and likely the just going to say all the things with the XR Sports Alliance. I mean, that's quite interesting, and I wonder where that's going to leave us because it's an impressive group of people that have joined that association now, and a really nice, interesting spread across the ecosystem. Plus, a lot of interesting and quite varied sports brands. And so that work pooling those resources and the experimentations that they're planning and that they've done could potentially shift the needle in terms of getting some really interesting use cases going.
I agree. For our listeners, the Extended Reality Sports Alliance is a non-for-profit co-founded by Exedo, HBS, and Qualcomm. It's dedicated purely to innovating in the XR space and in sports, of course. But we have lots of strong partners and the great team members working in this. We've got Google, Red Bull, the Vegas Golden Knights, and we did launch our first test experiment with E1 Power Series or Powerboat Racing. So there's lots still going on, and there's a lot of people committed to try and take a look at how we can push things further. All right, well, switching gears a little bit here. I think focus back on, I guess, standard OTT, but thinking back again as your lens across the landscape has shifted, a lot of the focus used to be on building the next Netflix. Today, it feels like that's changed a little bit. How would you describe the shift in messaging across the industry?
So I think it's definitely been this shift where people realize not everyone can compete with a Netflix, or not everyone can be Netflix. Let's say it more like that. And so I think we've seen a shift towards more unique USPs. You know, it might be something a bit more niche. So we're seeing lots of services that come out that are perhaps offering more niche content to a very specific targeted group. So there might be a smaller potential audience for them, but a much more committed fan base with that. And I think there's been, and or other things like, for example, with the XR, I mean, there's other ways that you can differentiate your service with certain functionalities or features that make it stand out. But it's not Netflix. It's not everything to everyone, this global thing, or it might be more regional content for a specific market and things like that. So I think there's been a shift, and in the messaging, it's very much around, it comes back to delivering to the audience what they want to see and messaging that appropriately. But the audience that you're targeting for a different service might be quite varied, basically. I don't know if that made sense.
No, I think I got what you're kind of trying to say. It's rather than an all like a one size fits all approach. You have to take the niche market that you're trying to target into account. In my last conversation with Murgesh Desai, we actually talked about digital third spaces, which are basically these communities that pop up around either content or different themes, hobbies, that interests, and I think that's probably become much more important as OTT's gone along here.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be interesting, especially with things like sports as well, is quite an interesting one where you have quite a dedicated fan base anyway. And so if you deliver them everything in one place around their team or around a specific sport, that becomes quite interesting.
I guess just kind of going back to that topic though, has this affected how I guess clients position themselves when working with you, or specifically just as this kind of trend has accelerated?
So I think there's been a natural progression in the way things are messaged as the industry has evolved, definitely. But there's also a lot of things in the messaging that stays more or less the same and just evolves slightly. So, for example, I found this press release that I found about Web 2.0. There was a quote from Michael in it that said, the TV media is traditionally a broadcast media with all users getting the same content. With IPTV technology, each end user can interact directly and personally with channels and services, right? So actually, I mean, he would cringe at that quote now slightly, but the concept is the same. We're still trying to. So our clients are tech vendors, and they're trying to sell to the broadcasters who want to create these services. But essentially, what we're saying to them is how they can use this technology to create the right service for their audience, whether that is Netflix with a global service and then they need to create personalizations at some level, or whether it's a very niche, a very regional service, niche content service, that overall message is the same, that you can create something quite personal. And with AI, that's going to get even more so. Right? You can target that personalization at a much more granular level. So it's interesting because I feel like some of that overarching message has actually more or less stayed the same, but just evolved with the technology and in terms of what's available, what's possible to achieve.
Keeping on that, then, what technology trend created the biggest PR wave in the industry? And is it like related to a specific topic, a specific technology, or just anything in general?
I feel like we've had a few and they come and go. So the first one was OTT in general, right? When that became a thing, which seems, like I say, it seems super weird now because OTT is just normal. But at one point it was brand new, and all the things that enabled. And so that was a massive thing. And I remember as well having a conversation. So when Excedo, for example, first made that switch from casual games to actually video experiences, I remember having a conversation with Peter White. He was from Rethink Research, he was Tommy Flanagan's boss at the time. And he bless him, because he was always really skeptical about everything, which was part of what made him brilliant. So, but I remember having a conversation with him back at IBC where he said, "Well, I just don't get it. What apps? Who's going to want this?" But actually, when we talked about it and realised that it's a way to package your video service up and all the things that delivers, I think it actually got it. It's that interesting transition that suddenly OTT became this thing, and that was interesting. The other big one, which is I suppose a bit more recent, is that shift to the cloud. So a lot of our clients, we work with a lot of clients that do things that enable cloud workflows, from cloud playout to software-based encoding and lots in between. And I suppose it kind of goes hand in hand with OTT, right? But yeah, it was interesting that all of those other workflows that lead into the original video creation as well as the delivery were starting to move to cloud. And then, of course, COVID accelerated that all in such a massive way. And we had to look at there was because a lot of our clients enabled all of that. So suddenly we were actually busier than ever, but having to think about how to message that, to talk about the benefits of cloud workflows. That was became quite obvious, and what was possible.
If we think about where these sorts of trends, or what sort of buzz is going to be coming next, is there anything emerging narratives wise in streaming communications that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah. So I mean, AI is obviously a massive topic that's getting talked about a lot, and AI is an interesting one. So it's been talked about both by the technology companies in terms of them trying to create AI solutions. But of course, it's also a tool that people might try and use for creating content, articles, etc. But whereas PR is all about building trust. And so in that kind of AI age, it's more important than ever, and it's more important than ever to make sure that it's actually authentic opinion from real people who know the industry and know what they're talking about, not generated purely by AI. With a bit of help, it's fine, of course. There's obviously a lot of talk around monetization and ad tech. So we've been working with companies. We work with YoSpace, for example, in the ad tech space. So there's that shift, the costs are rising, the competition's massive. Video providers need to make money and save money. And so we're talking a lot about hybrid business models, improving our technology so that it is less distracting to the viewer, but still gets the eyeballs and gets the revenue and is perhaps more engaging. Maybe even it'll turn into shoppable ads. I know that's been talked about a lot, but I don't think we've seen anything really tangible yet, any really good examples. So that's definitely a big topic that we're talking about a lot. And we talked about XR, of course, already, but that's the other one that's been an interesting topic. It's been really interesting to follow.
Just jumping back to that monetization aspect that you brought up there, I completely agree. I think the lower total cost of ownership, whether it's your internal costs, but then also just increasing revenue on the front end there, whether it's based on flexible subscription styles, hybrid monetization, new ad types. You mentioned Shophole is it's still working itself out. There's some unique opportunities there, but even just different ad formats, right? Overlays, pause ads, pullbacks, things that don't quite take the user out of anything is probably the way forward because they can kind of pull in different CPMs as well. But completely agree.
Once you pair that with XR as well, then that gets even more interesting, right? Because you can push the ads within the XR experience.
Yeah, and then you can go into a whole 3D space.
Yeah.
I think I've just got a couple more questions for you here. I guess anything interesting. We're recording this before NAB, but anything interesting you're looking forward to or in anticipation of?
At NAB or?
Yeah, or just anything coming out of there you expect.
I mean, I think we're going to hear a lot about AI again, and it's an interesting one. I think that there's definitely a lot of hype around AI. There's a lot of whenever there's a new technology like this, there is obviously going to be people jumping on the bandwagon. There are people trying to use AI because it's there and for the sake of it. So but at the same time, it's really interesting because some of the applications will be game changing. But I think the ones that will be game changing will be the ones that are the most boring, quite honestly, because they're the ones that handle the mundane stuff really easily and really cost efficiently, and then push the human in the loop to check stuff. But I think those are the ones that will have the most impact. They're just not as interesting to talk about. So yeah, I definitely think that we're going to see a lot of AI, more announcements at NAB, but also just in general beyond that, and as we go up to IBC, and then on the ad tech side as well. I mean, there's a lot going on with new ad formats. You've got the server guided ad insertion stuff, which I'm not fully across yet, but looks super interesting. Just helping to make monetization much easier across the industry, essentially.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe you've already answered this one here then, but just before we wrap up, after 20 plus years of watching this industry evolve, what still excites you the most about where streaming's headed?
So I feel like 20 years ago, when I started, and it was all about there, and it was linear TV, and you'd watch on your TV set and etc. I don't think many people could have truly predicted exactly where we'd be right now. Everyone watching on their phone, on the way to work, on the train, wherever they are, and all the different types of experiences, and the level of personalization that we've reached. So I feel like I don't know what it will be like in 20 years. Where will we get to? Will we be wearing headsets the whole time and do everything in an XR? I don't know, and I think that's what excites me. The fact that we don't know. What we do know, I think video is always going to be important in whatever form. It might be short form, it might be long form, it might be on your mobile. Maybe we'll go back to people watching on their TV more. So I feel the industry is always going to be important. people want to watch video. But what that looks like in 20 years, I don't know.
The excitement of the unknown. I love it.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Helen. Really appreciate you joining today.
Thank you, Neil. Good to talk to you.
That's all for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks again to Helen for joining. Really appreciate the convo and her insights around the industry and how it's changed over the last 20 years or so. If you liked what you heard, feel free to reach out and send us a message at playback.podcast@excedo.tv or reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's all, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.